On this Sunday night, the military mobilizes to Newfoundland. The rush to get troops on the ground.
We're also reminded that Newfoundland is very much an island.
And the race to dig out after record-breaking snow.
Snowbanks are so high you can't even get over.
The federal plan to rewrite Canada's assisted dying legislation. Plus, the prince's perspective on his new common life in Canada.
What I want to make clear is we're not walking away.
Global National with Robin Gill.
Good evening and thank you for joining us. Help is arriving in Newfoundland and Labrador as the province digs out from an historic snowfall. Canadian forces have mobilized to assist with the recovery in areas that have been buried in nearly a meter of snow. But the federal government is warning there will be logistical problems.
It's times like this, of course, we're also reminded that Newfoundland is very much an island. And at times like this, it makes it even more challenging to make sure that we get the resources in place that we need to get there.
A state of emergency will remain in effect until at least Monday in St. John's and other hard-hit communities. But before Newfoundlanders have even had the chance to finish clearing out this pile of snow, another storm is set to move in. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight.
Walking down the middle of this street, Glenn Denine is about a meter off the ground. It's a little tougher when he steps off the road. Denine left home Sunday to see his granddaughter. She was supposed to have a party for her 6th birthday, but like just about everything else in Newfoundland, it's canceled. Now, despite the struggle to get to the door, it turned out not to be working. The only way to get his granddaughter out,
come on,
was by the window.
I got you. You can just lean yourself to me. I got you. Come on. I'm going to slide you out.
Little Olivia's father, Josh Denine, tried to keep the door clear during the storm, but lost the battle.
Between Friday morning and Friday night, I was out and cleared the doorway away 4 or 5 times before I gave up at it because it was just too much. It was coming down too fast.
This was not a normal storm. It wasn't just the amount of snow, but how it was blown about. What it left will take time to clean up. How much time is the question. Snow removal crews are busy and exhausted, but until their work is done, people are stuck.
I can't see shoveling out. I can't go nowhere anyway. Nothing open.
An official state of emergency remains in effect in St. John's and several other communities. People are still supposed to stay at home. However, some restrictions have been lifted. Pharmacies were allowed to open so people could get medicine, and gas stations are now allowed to sell fuel as long as it's for snow removal vehicles, snow blowers, or generators. About 3,000 homes are still without electricity. Newfoundland Power says mobility is a big issue. Crews can't repair what they can't get to. The federal cabinet is meeting in Winnipeg. 3 ministers addressed the storm Sunday. The defense minister says about 150 to 200 soldiers should be on the ground, ready to help by the end of the day.
This could surge up to anywhere between 250 to 300 by tomorrow and the coming days.
The search continues for a 26-year-old man missing since the storm. Josh Wall disappeared Friday in the town of Roach's Line. Meantime, roads around hospitals have been opened. People can access them as long as they can get out of their homes. Progress, absolutely, but getting back to normal,
All right, this way.
is still a long way away. Mike Armstrong, Global News.
The last thing anyone in Atlantic Canada wanted was more snow, but that's what hit the Maritimes today. People in Nova Scotia, New Brunswick and Prince Edward Island had shovels in hand as the white stuff fell and accumulated quickly in places like Halifax and Fredericton. The snowfall warning has now ended there. The same storm system caused chaos in Toronto. Conditions were extremely dangerous for drivers. They were being warned to stay off the slick roads. Hundreds of crashes have been reported. Heavy blowing snow and fierce winds made it near impossible to see in some areas. Montrealers woke up to a winter wonderland today and are also busy digging out after the city was blanketed by snow. Fortunately, no more is in the immediate forecast. Snow has been falling across the prairies as well. It's still falling in Regina, where an extreme cold warning is in place. Temperatures there are set to plummet and could drop to -40 degrees tonight with the wind chill. More than a third of Americans aren't in the clear just yet. Bitter cold is gripping parts of the U.S., hammered by dangerous winter weather. A monstrous storm triggered another deadly avalanche and continues to cause treacherous travel conditions, despite the system moving out to sea. Jennifer Johnson reports.
Officials are blaming heavy snow for triggering another deadly avalanche, this time at Farmington Canyon north of Salt Lake City. Search and rescue crews tried to find a trapped 18-year-old. He was later flown to a hospital but did not survive. His father says the teen's blow-up backpack failed to deploy. Another tragedy from a massive winter storm that has swept across the upper U.S. Blizzard conditions shut down highways in North Dakota. Treacherous driving also in Michigan.
Just be careful, leave a lot of distance. It's hard to stop.
Police in several other states report staggering statistics. Over 800 kilometers of a major highway shut down in Nebraska. In Minnesota, police reported nearly 200 crashes. And in Pennsylvania, a pileup involving 15 tractor trailers closed busy Interstate 90 in both directions. At airports across the country, delays and cancellations put a halt on travelers' plans.
We have passengers we're dealing with, and then just trying to keep the conditions good.
Even in winter-ready New England, crews worked all night to keep the roads passable.
It's a quick hit. We got to get out there and spread salt, and traffic will grind the salt in and keep the roads safe until we do that till it's time to go plowing.
A bizarre weather change of events for people in the Northeast after temperatures hit 21 degrees Celsius last week.
Yeah, we wanted to go swimming, and then now we're building a snowman.
As this monster storm starts to wind down, some decided to make the best of it.
It's so exciting. There's so much energy and enthusiasm down here. We're really excited to be here and spend the day here.
And this advice for those who don't like winter's messy weather.
Great, I love the weather. It's New England. You don't like the weather? Go to Florida.
As people dig out from this massive storm and wind chills in the Dakotas expected to plummet to 40 degrees below zero, Florida may look like a tempting option. Jennifer Johnson, Global News.
There is sadness and grief in Ukraine tonight as the bodies of the victims of downed Ukrainian Airlines Flight 752 are returned to their native country. The world is still waiting to find out exactly what happened in the moments before the plane was shot down by Iran. And as Abigial Bimman explains, there's concern the Iranian government may be backtracking on its promise to turn over the black boxes.
At Kyiv's airport, a chance to remember 11 victims killed on flight PS 752 as their bodies return home. In Montreal, shared grief at this memorial. 57 Canadian citizens were on the plane, 29 permanent residents. We know 30 have now been buried in Iran, and the Prime Minister said this week families want about 20 victims to come home to Canada. Armin Muratab lost his twin brother and sister-in-law.
Please go investigate and find what has happened that night.
It was a necessary steps to stand up for the families.
Canada's Foreign Affairs Minister flew to the cabinet retreat in Winnipeg straight from his rare face-to-face meeting with his Iranian counterpart.
I stressed that, and I said, you know, Iran has a path to choose. Either they go to the path of transparency, accountability, and taking full responsibility. When you say to the world you take full responsibility, that comes with consequences.
But since he left, new reports emerged that Iran may not turn over the black boxes for a third-party investigation. When Francois-Philippe Champagne heard that, he reached out again in writing to push for it.
Perhaps the delay in handing over the black box is related to something on that black box that may implicate Iran further.
The two Canadian Transportation Safety Board investigators who were on the ground in Iran left for Ukraine Sunday after 6 days examining the wreckage. More are on standby for when a decision is made about the black boxes.
I mean, I'm sure there'll be more of an update of what type of work that needs to be done. But one thing I can assure you is we're working very hard to making sure that that the investigation that is going to be conducted is going to be credible and independent.
Not a lot of answers as the world waits for Iran's next move. And Canada doesn't have a lot of options after years of economic sanctions and no diplomatic relations with Iran. Abigial Bimman, Global News, Winnipeg.
A new development on Harry and Meghan's departure from royal service. The Duke of Sussex spoke at an event in London tonight. He says he and his wife had hoped to continue their royal duties without public funding while living an independent life. But Prince Harry says they couldn't reach an agreement to do that.
I've accepted this, knowing that it doesn't change who I am or how committed I am. But I hope that helps you understand what it had come to, that I would step my family back from all I have ever known, to take a step forward into what I hope can be a more peaceful life.
Buckingham Palace confirmed the couple will stop using their Royal Highness titles. Harry, Meghan, and their 8-month-old son Archie will divide their time between Canada and the UK. Now, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex are classified as internationally protected persons, so technically the Canadian government must provide them with security when they visit. But their new deal with the Queen is raising questions about how much time they will be spending in Canada and just how much their security will cost Canadian taxpayers. Canada's public safety minister says the federal government is still assessing Canada's role.
As we do in every case, if individuals require security, that's all determined by a very thorough assessment by our officials to determine what's necessary and what the costs might therefore be. But again, that determination has not yet been made.
Meanwhile, Meghan's estranged father is offering some blunt scrutiny of the situation. In a recent interview, Thomas Markle accuses his daughter of cheapening the royal family and says he's embarrassed that she and Harry made this decision.
She actually got every girl's dream. Every young girl wanted to become a princess, and she got that. And now she's tossing that away for, it looks like she's tossing it away for money.
Developing news out of Hawaii tonight. Hawaii's governor confirms 2 police officers have been shot and killed in an area of Honolulu that is popular with tourists. The officers were responding to an assault near Diamond Head, a popular monument near Waikiki Beach. That's when a gunman opened fire on the officers. The suspect was inside a home which caught fire. Local media are reporting the suspect started the fire and he's now dead. Thousands of Syrian civilians are on the move, fleeing the fighting between Russian-backed government forces and armed opposition groups. This convoy of displaced people is heading towards safe zones near the Turkish border. Most are from Idlib province. It's the last major rebel-controlled area in the country, and Syrian forces are battling to take control of it. The United Nations says at least 300,000 civilians fled the violence last month alone. A violent turn to the anti-government protests in Lebanon. Security forces in Beirut fired water cannons, tear gas, and rubber bullets on demonstrators who were throwing stones and lighting aerosol cans near the parliament building. At least 370 people were injured over the weekend, including one person who lost an eye after being hit by a rubber bullet. To Australia now, where scientists fear the scale and severity of the wildfires will permanently alter the country's landscape. Heat waves and a long-running drought fueled the biggest wildfire crisis ever recorded down under. 104,000 square kilometers of land were destroyed. That's an area the size of the Maritimes. The government is planning to reseed forests destroyed by fire, but experts doubt that will match the scope of the destruction. Coming up, the federal plan to rewrite the rules around medically assisted dying.
Want weather on the go? Reliable, accurate, and easy to use. The Global News Sky Tracker weather app.
One of Canada's beloved and influential artists, Gordon Smith, has died at the age of 100. Smith was born in England and moved to Canada in the 1930s, where he studied art. During the Second World War, he served as an intelligence officer for the Canadian military. Smith was guided as a painter under the mentorship of the Group of 7 artist Lorne Harris. His work can be found in major art galleries, including the one bearing his own name. Smith died at his home in West Vancouver last night. The federal government is running out of time to put new medically assisted dying rules in place. Last year, a Quebec judge deemed the current law too restrictive and unconstitutional. Ottawa now has less than 2 months to rewrite it. And as Linda Aylesworth explains, they want your input on the new legislation, which is expected to be tabled next month.
When medical assistance in dying, or MAID, became law in Canada in 2016, many aspects of the complicated topic were covered by the bill. In particular,
a fundamental aspect of that law was the end-of-life criterion, which basically meant that it was restricted to people who were at the end of their life and were going to pass away anyway.
The trouble is with the law, by providing a right to one person,
you may create vulnerabilities of others.
But a few months ago, the Superior Court of Quebec heard the cases of Nicole Gladue and Jean Touchon, who wanted the right to doctor-assisted deaths even though they weren't dying.
I don't want to die. I want to stop I want to stop the sufferings.
The ruling?
The Quebec Superior Court has said that that part of the law is unconstitutional.
And so the federal ministers of justice and disability inclusion were in Vancouver as part of an 8-city cross-Canada tour, asking experts on the subject for input.
We've had a number of very interesting roundtables across Canada, from Halifax to Vancouver, and there's a diversity of opinion, but a lot of interesting and specific concrete suggestions in terms of meeting the criterion of the Quebec Superior Court.
Quickly, because the court-ordered deadline is March 11th. Not much time to rewrite such a complex law.
My goal is to get a draft bill in front of the House of Commons during the month of February. We haven't ruled out the possibility of asking for an extension, but for the time being, my priority is getting that bill in front of the House.
They're also asking the public to participate in an online questionnaire.
As of yesterday, over 150,000 people had participated in the online survey in only a short period of time.
You'll find it on the Department of Justice Canada homepage. Linda Aylesworth, Global News.
Still ahead, the bold thieves targeting cargo trucks in the Greater Toronto area. Staggering new data shows the number of tractor-trailer thefts and cargo crime is on the rise in the Greater Toronto area. Thieves are stealing anything from meat to liquor. The Ontario Trucking Association says more needs to be done to combat these crimes, including changing the laws to include stiffer penalties for those convicted. Global Toronto's Camille Karamali reports.
Who are you?
This video, uploaded to YouTube,
because this truck is stolen,
appears to show a Brampton man going head-to-head with a tractor-trailer thief.
This isn't your truck! I talked to the owner today already!
Before the alleged cargo criminal drives off. Something trucking company manager Harmanjit Jand has seen firsthand.
It is definitely a concern. Cargo theft has been a concern for the last 5 years.
Around the Greater Toronto area, only Peel and York Regional Police have units dedicated to tackling cargo and tractor-trailer thefts. The number of robberies in the past 5 years in Peel has soared. In 2015, 98 cases of cargo theft. In 2018, that jumped to a whopping 341 cases reported.
The GTA is the hotbed of cargo crime in Canada. There are more goods stolen in Canada than all of the US in 2018. Peel region comes only behind California as the highest jurisdiction for cargo crime.
Police say the criminals will steal anything, including meat. That's what was in the stolen tractor trailer that rammed into a gas station just outside Toronto, killing the driver. A rare fatality in what police call a low-risk, high-reward crime, with the bad guys netting roughly 30% of the stolen goods value after reselling.
We've had loads $1 million worth. So you do the math, they're making pretty good money for one night's work.
The Ontario Trucking Association says that money is used to fund more nefarious criminal activity. It's easy because police are struggling to keep up. And a justice system that allows the cargo thieves to walk right back out onto the streets.
They're usually released within 24 hours, and they're unfortunately back out doing exactly what they were doing before.
Truckers are calling for change.
I think the laws need teeth. The laws as they're currently written do not differentiate between simple crime and cargo crime.
Police say part of the responsibility is also on the trucking companies to beef up security.
Camille Karamali, Global News, Toronto.
Up next, we check in on St. John's, Newfoundland in the aftermath of the storm. Most people in St. John's are still digging themselves out of the record-breaking levels of snowfall that buried them this weekend. As we reported earlier, the military is mobilizing to assist, but for now, it's neighbor helping neighbor. The Weather Network's Chris Murphy is there to give us a little perspective on the snowy situation.
All right, well, you clearly see today it's all about the big digging out. Look at the size of these snowbanks. It's unreal. I have never seen this as a result of one storm, maybe back to back to back. We call this, that's the cavalry right there hooking up the power. Now they've done most of the larger grids. Now they're just working their way down the line and trying to get everybody there. But as we just take a little walk here, I mean, for all we know, there could be cars under these snowbanks, but those have been digging out. I've also been noticing a lot of people helping each other out. So people have been asking me, yes, it's record-breaking. Is this an unprecedented storm? Well, we actually get storms like this, or storms similar size, almost every year. It's just this year, it was St. John's turn to get hit. It just hit the sweet spot. We call this a weather bomb. And that what happens is the barometric pressure plummets at least 24 millibars in 24 hours or less. Essentially, it means that it's like a storm, and then it gets injected by steroids. And that's what happened. We had the cold air from the continent colliding with that warm air coming up from the Gulf Stream. The last time I could ever remember a storm anything comparable to this would have been the one known as White Juan back in February 2004. Maritimers remember that. They're still talking about that storm in Halifax. And this one here, well, this one's for the books, no doubt about it. Talking with power, this rivals, some of the bad ice storms we've had. If you look back at our rich history of Canadian winter storms, we'll have to add one more. I guess we should come up with a name for it. I'll let other people decide that. So going forward, well, we got to take advantage of the calm conditions and clear skies because there's more snow coming in tonight, another 10, 15 plus centimeters of snow, and that means that people will be digging out again tomorrow. So it won't compare to this, but it will be adding a little bit of insult to injury, as it were. But just one more look, everybody doing their job. To the city crews, they've been really big thumbs up.
Thanks, Chris. And that is Global National for this Sunday. I'm Robin Gill. Tonight, your Canada is a resilient robin in a snowstorm in Oshawa, Ontario. Thank you for watching. Donna Friesen will be back here tomorrow. Have a great night.